Welcome to Hochoka Podcast.
Hello, Mitaki Epi, and welcome to Hochoka here at the center of St. Joseph's Indian Schools campus. I am Scott Wooster, today's Hochoka host. I'm glad you have joined our circle to hear from Father Tom Cassidy, SCJ, who led the school from 1977 to 1986. He is here to shed light on the shift from dormitory living to family units during that time, the issues that prompted that change, and the vision that made it a reality. So, Father Tom, it's good to have you here in Hochoka. Welcome. You were here 1977, 1986, as we
That's
said.
Correct, yes.
Okay. And give viewers a little idea of what it was, what brought you here, what kind of work you were doing here, and give us an idea of who you are at that time.
Well, I'm a member of the Priest of the Sacred Heart, and that's really what brings me here. I joined the community in 1962. I was ordained in 1971. I was principal of our minor seminary when I was asked to come out here. So my background has been in most of my life really in education or administration. So those are the kind of things that drew me out to here. Basically, I was assigned here.
Right.
And in some ways, I had no idea I'd be coming here.
Right.
It wasn't something that was on my radar at the time, but I was asked and fell in love with the place.
Excellent. And so did I as well. Many of us do. But you came here in 77.
Correct.
And took over the role of...
At that time, we called it superintendent. Now I think they use the term president. But
right.
Basically, you were in charge of the operation.
Okay, and that's changed over time a little bit,
Right.
but this was under your watch,
Correct.
basically. Okay, so what does that mean? What kind of work would that have meant for you during that time, those 9 years?
Basically, I was responsible for the education and for the home program, the living program for the students. Dormitories when I first got here.
Okay.
The fundraising was a separate operation.
Okay.
As it still is in a sense. But outside of fundraising, I was responsible for what took place here at St. Joe's Indian School.
Okay.
The buck stops here that time.
Right.
Yes, yeah.
For childcare living,
Correct.
for what's happening
Yes.
with the kids that are here. So the time leading up to when you were here, the 60s, the 70s, before you came on board was quite a time with a lot of changes, and a lot of things came together to make St. Joe's what it was at that time. And there, kind of consider that maybe a time when there was a lot of self-reflection about the direction that this school would turn, and you inherited that role at a time when much of that happened. And I've heard you credited with a lot of you're credited for a lot of those changes that happened around that time, or making the decisions that would make those changes. Can you address what might have been going on around that time that initiated some of the things that you did?
First of all, I'd give credit to my predecessor, which had been Father Mike Burke,
Okay.
who I think began seriously to look at how do we try to incorporate Lakota practices, Lakota language in particular, and Lakota culture into our program, into our curriculum. So he began it, baby steps as always,
Right.
and it certainly has come a long way from the 1970s till today. Of course, they were kind of turbulent times, particularly the 60s, but that began, shall we say, I won't say peter out, but transform itself. And like any institution, we were affected by it,
Right.
like anyone else, and had to begin to look at what are we doing and what's best for the children who were coming to us. So that was kind of the genesis of beginning to look at the living situation. I will say this, what helped me, I won't go into all the circumstances, but I ended up being principal of the school for 1 year.
Okay.
Why it helped me is I had a close relationship with the students that you don't as the the top
Exactly.
top rung. So
Yep.
I got to I think to understand their reality, some of the processes that they go through, some of the ideas that you don't think of. For example, how spatial in many ways Indian culture tends to be,
Yep.
And what good artists they tend to be.
Right.
So those was a good experience for me, and I think ultimately it's very helpful when we began to look at the home program.
Okay. So Father Tom, the one big change and that I see associated with your name quite often is that shift from dormitory living to more of a family living unit. And I came to the school in 1994, and all of that had taken place already. So I don't know anything different. I know the pictures that I've seen, and as you and I talked a little bit off camera before, there was a gap of 8 years between the time you came or you left and the time that I came, and there were a few people that were able to carry over some of the stories. So I know some of those things, and I've seen some of the pictures. But that had to be a pretty exciting time for you to be a part of that, where the school went to more of that holistic care, where and you said you saw it firsthand with the students by getting close to them, that just what they might need, that wasn't just a book in front of them and a place to sleep, but something that felt a little bit different. Can you talk a little bit about how that shift from the dorms to family living units might reflect that holistic approach?
Indeed, it was an exciting time. I did things I never thought in my life I would be doing. I never thought I'd spend a lot of time building. Things that I knew nothing about. But fortunately, we had good contractors and good architects, so they made that part rather easy. We kind of worked like used I would call town hall process. Every so often we would gather practically all the staff. Obviously, a couple had to stay with the kids, and we would talk about, this is what we want to do. This is how we think we'd like to go about it. I tried to assure people no one is going to lose their job because we're going to make this transformation. Because people, for example, in the laundry, at that time, they had a big laundry center where all the clothes were done. Well, that was going to shut down. I said, but we will work it out that people are not going to lose jobs because we're going to go to this model. And I must say the staff here was very supportive and very helpful in going through that process. Originally, I think we thought it would take us 3 or 4, maybe longer years to make the transformation, because while St. Joe's wasn't poor, we were had a lot less resources then that the institution has now.
Right.
So, and that's expensive process to go through in building. So we figured it would take us time. And we began with what was the girls' building, turned that into the first apartments. I used to say we can't throw buildings away. Can't afford to. So we did that, and then we thought it would take time before we could do the boys. But as soon as we finished that, we realized it can't be a long process, because you can't run 2 different types of programs at the same time. So
exactly.
We received a grant of $250,000 from the Bush Foundation out of Minneapolis. That was a challenge grant, and that really was the seed money that allowed us to do the homes that are the freestanding homes down by the river.
Right.
So it took us maybe 2 years, 2.5 to 3 years to make the transformation.
Right.
So we're very happy about that.
Yeah.
And I thought one of the best measures was when I was here, when I first got here, we would regularly have kids run away.
Okay.
But the number of instances of running away almost disappeared once we went to the homes.
Yeah.
I'm sure it still happens to some degree, but it really has disappeared.
Yeah.
Because it's one of the big advantages, I think, of the home program is a kid can't hide. In a dormitory of 50 kids, it's easy to be lost in the shuffle. You can hide your emotions in many ways, the difficulties you might be facing, the challenges you might be facing. It's much more difficult when you're living with 11 other students and you have a set of house parents and alternates that are looking after you 7 days out of the week.
Absolutely.
So I think that certainly has been very helpful. Plus the fact the idea is try to model what home life should be like or could be like. It's not perfect,
right?
Because they're not your biological
Absolutely.
parents, et cetera, and they're different people. But to give you a model of what family life might be or could be for you in the future.
Right. I really, really like. You said a kid can not only blend in physically, but they can blend in emotionally, or just you can disappear as a kid a little bit in a setting like that. And for folks who aren't aware of the way that used to look back then, if you had some of the old timers, an Andy Lepkowski or a Dennis, their stories are of trying to supervise a 1 on 60 sometimes kind of,
Yes.
and people here this time and that we're in right now couldn't fathom that. I mean, you're in such a position to do what you're saying, treat the kid holistically, because you're 1 on 12 or 2 on 12 actually, so 1 on 6. You just have that time to treat the kid in the way that they deserve to be treated, which is really nice, because I think sometimes obviously those things were going to fall through the cracks before the family living units. I mean, you talk about how this came into play. You know, there's grants, there's planning, there's building, all that kind of stuff. But was there something that just struck you that drove you in a certain way, one particular thing or one particular feeling that might have driven this whole thing?
I probably would go back to one of the first of the great Catholic social encyclicals, Rerum Novarum, which says the base of society is the family, which to me makes sense.
Right.
Now, of course, families of 100 years ago are somewhat different than family is today because of society and societal forces, but I think it is still basically true. And if we could model that for these kids, I think we were doing them a great service. That the heart of any society is going to be the family. It's the basic unit of society. And ask me, I think it's just simply common sense.
Right.
Nothing else.
Right.
It's simply common sense. You know, living with 59 other people or 50 other people, it's just not. That's a herd mentality. It's
yes.
not, it's just. And I used to use an example when we were trying to argue about whether we should do this or not. Is watch the kids as they're going to the dining room for lunch. They used to come running out of the dorms, and it's almost like the herd of cattle. You know, there was a certain pecking order. You had to be in that order before you got into the building.
Right.
You know, that said something.
Right.
It said something to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And so when you came here in '77 and you looked and you saw that, you know, it's your first time at St. Joe's, you're looking at this, you're seeing it for the first time. And like you said, it's almost common sense. It must have struck you almost immediately that there might be a better way to do this.
Very much so. And there was one other component of which I didn't mention is when I first got here, St. Joe's really ran on volunteers, both in the school and in the home the dorm program at the time. And I thought you cannot run an institution where 30% or more of your people leave every year. Because they have to. They're basically volunteers. They're doing this for a couple of years and then moving on. So we redid how we were going to approach that by developing a pay scale based off the Chamberlain school system. We basically came up with we will do it $1,000 less than what they did, and my argument was we pay St. Joe's pays the entire, at that time anyway, the retirement program of people. Where in the public schools they had to put in 5% of their income. So that more or less evened us out, at least in my mind.
Right.
So we adopted that, and that I think helped stabilize the staff. Once you stabilize the staff, certainly made homes much more possible.
Yeah.
Although again, it's hard to keep house parents for a very long time because it's hard work, very hard work.
It is
very demanding work.
It is.
But at least we do keep them for more than we did when we had the volunteers.
Right. It's trickier to keep folks here.
That made me think we had a artist in residence from Ohio, and I used to ask people, why do you come to South Dakota? For the very reason, it's a very rural state, few people. And his answer was, South Dakota. I hope no one else discovers it.
Yeah, right, yeah.
That's part of the beauty of it.
It is. It's a charm, for sure, for some of us, definitely. I want to let you know, and the viewers know too, of course, just how much of, and you know this already, you're not that far removed from us since 1986 that you don't know what's happening back at good old St. Joe, but how far this place has come since those things happened. You know, as a guy who's been here 28 years, that mission that you put into place or the ideas that you put into place in 77 or that Father Burke put into place before you, it's been constant change since then. And you can see that as you drive back on campus. It's all family living units. Staff is obviously treated well. in a good way. The kids are, you talked about even the Lakota programs, trying to nurture that a little bit. And it's interesting, you came here in 77 and the Freedom of Religion Act was passed in 78, I believe. And so much has changed. These kids just came back from a cultural trip where they visited Greasy Grass and Wounded Knee and climbed to the top of Black Elk Peak and did all these kinds of things. So simply, I just want to say thank you for your vision, because and I want to thank you on behalf of the families too and the kids, because those changes have benefited not only the kids that you had back in 1980, but they continue to benefit those kids and families currently. As you were planning for the changes that came to the school back then, were there any moments of humor or just sheer grace that came to you during that time?
When I saw that question, I said, what in the world am I going to say? But there is one story that I've always stuck with me, humorous one. When we applied for the grant from the Bush Foundation, they came out here to see the place. Mm-hmm. We'd already had the girls' building turned into the homes. They were all homes at the time. So what we did is they had about 4 or 5 people come. He said, there are 8 homes. Choose a home. They're expecting you. They're going to have lunch for you, so you can see what home life is like as we envision it now, as we're doing it. And one of the people came back and told me, one of the kids said, "Oh, don't give them any money. They got plenty."
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, fortunately, they didn't listen. Bush just gave it.
Right. Yeah. They did the right thing. Thankfully. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Interesting.
And as far as moments of grace, I think the program itself was a graced moment, and is to this day.
Speaks for itself.
Yes, it sure does.
Absolutely. So, Father Tom, thank you once again for being here in Ho-Chokeh today.
Thank you very much. It was my pleasure.
Mm-hmm. And thank you, viewers, for joining us here in the Ho-Chokeh, here at the center of St. Joseph's Indian Schools campus, where we talk about issues that are central to Native American education today. Until next time, stay centered.